Hello, everyone. This is Mike from Dimensional Walking, and today we're going to do our part two of the UFOs, Robert Dean and Ted Loman. Okay, so it's probably important for you to watch part one. It's not that long, it's probably about 16, 17 minutes, if I remember correctly. And I will have in the comments section, I will have a direct link that you can go back and watch one if you haven't seen it before you watch this one, because I'm going to try not to repeat very much from part one, because I like to keep these as short as possible. I know everybody likes to just kind of get the good information and roll on and not have a very long video. So let's get into it. Again, I'm not going to repeat too many things. Just a shout out to Ted Loman. Thank you for everything you've ever done in the UFO community with your Access channel in Arizona. I know you don't do it anymore, but anyways, it was a great starting point for many people, and there were some great speakers there, especially in this particular case, Robert Dean. So let's go over just a few more things that I kind of left out of part one before we get into the four conclusions of the study. Number one, I have to do a little correction. I noticed when I looked at part one that I said 1981 on the study. It was 1961 on the study. That was my little correction that I noticed I looped on. A couple more things. The Russians, let's go back to the Russians for a minute. Because at one point, I think the NATO was possibly thinking they were involved with these UFOs, that they were maybe flying the UFOs out of Russia into Europe. And the reality was they weren't. There was an incident, I guess it was the late 50s. Well, let me back that up. That is not true. It was in the late 50s for Russia. Actually, theirs was in the very early 90s. Apparently, there was a large sighting over one of their military facilities or headquarters in Russia, where hundreds of people actually went out in the parking lot and actually saw this huge UFO and was hovering there, they say, for almost an hour. Um, and all these military people and everybody saw it, and I think they sent fighter jets up, and that didn't seem to want to move the UFO, and they didn't shoot at it or anything. They just kind of let it because it wasn't doing anything harmful, and so it just stayed over Russia there. I mean, over this particular facility for about an hour. Now that was reported, according to Dean, that was reported in the press in Europe, but it never really made it to the United States. I personally went ahead, thought it was so interesting, I went ahead and I started doing some research myself, internet search, etc., and I couldn't find anything on it either. I don't know if it's just because it's quite a few years ago that it just faded away, or it isn't. It's so deep inside there you can't find some things when they get old. Um, so interesting. If anybody out there, of course, has heard of this and actually has some more information about it, sure, I'd really like to know about it. Besides, the what Robert Dean had said. Um, anyway, so that was important. The other thing about the Russians was there was so much concern about these UFOs flying around Europe in the late 50s and 60s that they actually set up the first time a hotline, kind of the red phone thing you hear about, the hotline between their military to make sure that there's no misfiring or miscalculation, thinking that these UFOs are actually from either Russia or for the United or from NATO countries. So that was an interesting thing I had never heard of before. So it was kind of the beginning of a new wave of communication between the East and the West. So there was another thing that he had also said is that there was a group of, there's 11 astronauts, he said, and there was, I think, 4 cosmonauts that were very much willing to talk about what they had seen during their missions. And there has been a few of them that have come forward. very cautiously in the past. So, anyways, he had brought that up. I thought that was really interesting. So there was, now some of these probably have died by now. I don't doubt that. But I think they were all kind of afraid. They have some pretty good pensions, and they really didn't want to disrupt that. And they do sign. Military people do sign these things about UFOs or information, because I think a lot of this would be classified as secret or top secret. And if you divulged any of this type of stuff, you could be in big trouble. Um, you know, Prison time and everything. Now, I don't think anybody's ever gone to prison for saying things about UFOs. Let's hope that never comes to that. Anyways, I think they take that very when it comes to dollars and cents and retirement. I think everybody takes that pretty seriously. So I don't think a lot of people have said it. And I've talked to military people, and I've talked to pilots that were military people, and I did get some really good information out of them. So, anyways, so that's that. Let's see what. Oh, there was another interesting little story I meant to tell you in part one. Was that he said that there was a UFO crash that the British apparently. And I don't know if I got the date in my notes here. And it isn't that important. Maybe it was definitely in the 60s. But what he said is they apparently, wherever it crashed, and apparently there was some beings that were recovered, but they took the ship, they cut the ship up into a bunch of pieces and put it on flatbeds, and they took it to one of their secure facilities to further reverse engineer it or whatever they were going to do with it, but they got it to a safe place. And I don't know, he didn't seem to know where any of the alien beings were taken to or whatever happened to them at all. So I thought that was interesting. I'd never heard about that at all. Other people may have, but I hadn't. So okay, I think that was some of the little bits and pieces that I wanted to not forget. So let's get to the four things that came out of the four main things, the four simple main things that came out of the study, that NATO study that General Pike had put together it came out in 1961. I'll get that right yet. Okay, number one. Let's see here. Hold on one second. Let me back up a minute here. Okay. Number one, I think, was the conclusion that they were not a threat. None of these UFOs were a threat, a military threat to the world. Okay, that was kind of the really main thing they wanted to talk about. Two, they were studying. They've been studying us on this earth for, they said, thousands of years. I believe that. I mean, I've always felt that way too after years and years of research, that they had been around for a very long time and been studying us and looking at us and interacting with us in some way, shape, or form. They actually, and I guess they made this a separate point. I wasn't really sure why, but they said they had a specific process. These aliens had a specific process, and I think there was a process that was over time. It was, maybe studying people over, a lifetime type things that they used. It was kind of a standardized process they used. Okay, they didn't give any. The report, I don't think, gave any details, or if it gave details, Dean was not telling us the details at this point. Number four was that there are four different groups. Okay, four different groups that he was aware of, and there could be more, but he did say there was four groups, and that's what I wanted to talk about, the four different groups, because that would be the thing that would be the absolute most interesting of all. Okay, so there was number one, there was the human type, and they said they were absolutely identical to human beings. Okay, there had to be some differences, right? Because they're alien, they're not really human from a standpoint originating here. Okay, so these are the ones, and I think in part one you may have heard me mention that there was these sightings in the 50s and 60s in Europe where these ships would land and out would come a human. Couldn't tell. Everybody said they were humans. They came out of these flying saucers, basically, walked out, talked to them in English or whatever language they happened to be. It could, if you're in Belgium, it would be Belgium. If it was Germany, it would be German. France, it would be French. Okay, or any of the English-speaking countries, would be English. So they were human. They spoke the languages, and they invited them in their little ships, and they toured them around a little bit, and they brought them back, and they were very nice to them. And that was it. So those are the humans. Number two were the Greys. Now, the Greys, the interesting point he brought up about the Greys is they seem like they were cloned. And they seem to be kind of android. They kind of be AI. They seem to be mechanical robots, I guess is what it came back down to. And they were all quite short. They all looked absolutely identical. There didn't seem to be any difference between them. And the interesting thing about them, they seem to be in all the crashes that happened around the world, including the United States, including the crash I just told you about in the Baltic Sea. That was the one with the British cut up the vehicle, cut up the ship, and Russia, and other places, and it was always Greys that crashed. I don't know if the Greys just had lousy equipment and they were always crashing, or what the deal was with the Greys, because they were crashing, and they probably still crash to this day. Okay, so it was always the Greys, and Dean thought they were cloned. Okay, then there was reptilians. I don't think it seemed that the reptilians, maybe it's from my own standpoint, are the least of the ones of the groups, but they're probably, in my mind, the scariest of the groups. Dean didn't say that, but they were reptilian in many ways. Humanoids, but had reptilian eyes, slitted eyes, like cat eyes, I guess we'd call them. And they have the skin that has kind of a scaly, different color look to it. I forget what the color he said, but anyways, they definitely were the reptilians. And reptilians are real. They're absolutely real. I've seen them for my own eyes. They're quite scary looking. And sometimes they can actually act scary too. Okay. And then there was this other group he talks about that were sort of like the Greys, but they're much taller and they're more humanoid looking. And they had round heads, very round heads. Though that was a whole nother group. So those are the four groups. I mean, those are the four questions, and that was also the four different types of beings that Robert Dean talked about. So I thought that was really interesting. So that's really the end of it. I want to thank Robert Dean for his work. I think he's a very credible guy. As you probably know by now, he died in 2018, and he was born in 1922. So I don't know if my math is absolutely positive right, but I think it's about 9. That would have made him about 96 in 2018 when he passed away. So thank you very much, Robert, for all you did for the UFO community, and being courageous and fearless, and getting the word out. And up until this minute, I haven't found too many things in what you've said that is incorrect in my research on you. But I'm sure there'll be people out there that will be critical, and that's fine. That's fine. And if there is something that is incorrect, or you feel that is, send me the evidence, because I want to see it. I really, really do. That's what it's all about. It's about the evidence. So Anyways, with all that said, thank you very much. If you want to send us a private email, it's dementiawalking@gmail.com. I am going to put a link in the description on this particular video so you can watch the whole. It's a pretty long video. The original video that Ted Loman did with Robert Dean in Tucson, Arizona in the early 90s. So you can look at it yourself. You can look at it. I try and give you a little bit of a summary, my own summary and my own input in my two videos, part 1 and part 2. So anyways, we need your subscriptions. Please comment here. We need your likes. And that's it. Happy trails until we meet again. Thank you.